I'm going to be walking you through my full process for getting vegetation, trees, that kind of stuff into the scene. I'm going to be using the 3D Shaker Trees pack. There's a link in the description. I just find their assets are super high quality. You know, I'm not an expert at making trees, so I'm just going to use trees from an expert. Starting out, this is kind of where we left off a little bit before, but I have made a few changes. I've changed the sun angle, and you can see it's kind of a different vibe. Before we had the sun on the back, but I didn't really feel right. I also changed the darkness of the brick just to be a little bit more balanced with the batten ceiling. And I added a few plants in here just from the Polygon plugin, which I've used. And that's pretty much it. And so you can see I've got the right hand side here, which is a 3D viewport, and I've got the render view here on the left. And it's just a good way to kind of see the end result and then move around freely. But what I'm going to do, because it can be a little bit touch and go with trees, is I'm going to start rendering with the CPU. Even though my graphics card is faster, it can kind of make it crash because these trees aren't low poly. They're really, really high quality, and so they are a little bit bigger on the memory. But I think it's worth it if you have a decent computer to go ahead with something like this. So I'm just going to change it to open image denoise as well, because that's CPU, I think. Maybe. I think apparently optics works now for CPUs, but I'm going to use open image denoise. So regularly save because trees are just crazy on the graphics or on the memory. What I'm going to do is I want to really try to blur this direct sunlight here with some trees, but not too much. So I'm just kind of like bringing this over, and I really just want to create a little bit of dappled light that's hitting that. It's not quite there yet, so I just want to pull back. I wonder. I'm just going to go into top view, and let's just keep bringing this across. Yeah, I think that might be doing something. It's kind of a little bit. Let's just add one more into the mix. Yeah, I think that might be better. Let's just save that. I'm always saving when I'm placing trees because it's just so easy for it to crash, unfortunately. I quite like that. We can refine that later, but I think that's a really good start. So what I do whenever I'm placing vegetation is I'm thinking first about the light quality, how the trees affect the direct light, and then afterwards I think about like what the trees you actually see. So that's kind of my workflow process. I'm just going to duplicate this one here. I just want to see a few more in the scene. I think that's pretty good so far. Let's just pull this one over. It is a really, really minimal part of the scene overall, so it's not super important, but I just think it helps to show a little bit of context. Let's just duplicate this and save. So I think that's maybe a good spot there. I'm really trying to target this corner here. I think that might be a little bit too close. So I can just kind of select this one here. If I click through the glass a few times, I can select this tree at the back. Yep, and then I'm just going to bring this right down. And then I might actually make it smaller, because it's actually too big. It's kind of like not super dense. When you make the tree bigger, if you resize it, the density just goes out the window, and we do want something that's quite dense. So I can see on that right hand side, maybe a little bit bigger. So I just want to kind of close that gap a little bit. But I think that's starting to look quite good. Yeah, so we've got some really, really nice dappled light, when before it was just like, really, really harsh direct light, and it was actually too much of a focal point. But now we've kind of softened that with some nice tree shadows, some dappled light, and we've also got a little bit of context at the back, which is also quite nice. What I'm thinking as a last kind of final touch, and this may work or may not, I'm literally experimenting as I go, is it might be quite nice to have like a kind of an indication of a tree on the right hand side. So just like it's almost like it's on the water. So let's just move this down. And let's see how that looks. It's all about experimentation, and I don't really pre-plan these things. This is just showing my own process. I think that is actually quite nice. Let's just move it up a little bit. And obviously it makes everything a bit darker. So just to kind of counter that, I'm going to go 1.3 for the exposure. Yeah, I think that's quite nice. Let's do 1.5 because it's affecting the light, the overall exposure. I think 2 is quite good. I might just move this. I might just shrink this tree a little bit. I think that's quite nice. Let's move it up a little bit. I think that's quite good. Yeah. I quite like that. So there's a few things that kind of strike out to me. This this light here is really, really saturated. So I'm just going to quickly reduce the saturation right down. Let's do like 0.3. That's getting there. And the value, let's go like 0.5. I want to kind of match the ceiling batten timber. Let's do 0.2. Yeah, that's better. And I am going to edit these couch materials as well, but I'll do that after. I think it's almost there, but I just want to move this tree forward a little bit. And I almost want to blend it in with the one in the foreground. And this one at the back as well. Let's just see how that looks. And this really is just a lot of experimentation and playing around. Sometimes it literally takes hours for me to get a really, really good result. And obviously, I'm not going to be spending an hour just playing around with trees. I just wanted to show you my process for how I get the vegetation assets into the scene, and my thought process around starting with what affects the direct light, and also, the trees that you see that might not actually create the shadows, but it's more of a visual compositional kind of aspect. So I hope you found this useful. Make sure to stick around for the next one in the series, because I'll be taking you through how I do post-production in Photoshop. And make sure to check out my Instagram. There's a link in the description. You can see the kind of work I do as a professional, and also check out my Discord. You can kind of share your work with me and the community, and it's just a great place to level up as a 3D artist. So I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.